Hello everyone, my name is Yunus. This is going to be my first video in my channel. I have a lot of things I'm looking forward to talking with you guys, but this one in particular will be about my social media adventure that I had in China, in Turkey, and now in the US. So welcome to my channel. I apologize in advance. People often comment on my accent. They always tell me it sounds like something, but also sounds like nothing. Kind of weird. So hopefully my accent doesn't bother you so much, guys. If it does, I apologize in advance. Once again, my name is Yunus. I'm almost 40 years old. I've been living in the US for 2 years, but prior to that, I lived in China for 16 years and 22 years in Turkey before that. I have a bit of a complicated story, but basically I was born in Turkey. I have an industrial engineering major. Then I moved to China, did business development there for many years as a manager or director also. Then I decided to go into sports full time. I started as a nobody in the sports I did over there, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Then I managed to become one of the most famous, if not the most famous for a period, Jiu-Jitsu guy in China. Again, I had many, let's say, disadvantages in my body that I always carried from birth. But even then, I was able to get some success like world scale. I won AGP Worlds in Jiu-Jitsu and some other Asian titles and many Chinese titles, stuff like that. And during all this adventure, I've been very involved with social media. I like taking photos, I like taking videos, I like sharing stories. I think that contributed to that as well. I've been playing with social media for about like 10 years plus. And I basically do social media in 3 different countries still to this day. My biggest operations are in China under the name Yunus. That's my name in China, like I mean my online name. At my peak, I had close to 1 million followers in China, which is now around like 600,000 plus followers or something like that. I had the privilege of working with top level people over there as my sponsors. I've done government level projects, was featured in TV, magazines and all that like many times. A lot of things I'm looking forward to explain to you more in detail in other videos, but not today's topic exactly. But basically what I shared there was mostly revolving around like martial arts or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Also I shared a mix of like humor, like vlogs, technical analysis or technical details, and so on. My social media accounts there are still active in Chinese platforms. So if you search for my name, it's easy to find me there. Now in Türkiye, which you might be more familiar with the name Turkey, which is my home country, I also have a small social media operations going on there as well. I just use my full name over there, Yunus Emre Karasakal, and it has about like 7,500-ish followers at the moment. It's growing very slowly but steadily, I would say. And the content over there is more centered around like talking about life. It's mostly about sharing personal experiences, to be honest with you. Again, in Turkey, it's not a huge channel or anything like that, but people in the industry will have heard of it. And it has a small but very loyal following, which I'm privileged to have, to be honest. Now, in the US, it's a bit more different. I don't do much based on myself. I only recently got my green card in the US. Yeah, I'm very happy, of course. And that gave me the green light to work outside of my basic industry, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I came in here with an O1 visa as an extraordinary talent, whatever. And then after a short while, I was able to get my green card. Before that, I was only allowed to work in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a coach. Now I can do actually social media for other clients and stuff. I have a few clients, hopefully looking forward to building that up in the future. But what I'm doing for them is basically social media management and visual media production and stuff like that. So I didn't have anything serious going on in the US based on myself until now. That being said, now doing social media in these 3 different countries, guys, while there are some fundamental facts that applied to all of these countries, I have to admit the experience is always very different when I'm working in these 3 countries, guys. And that's what I want to focus on in this video. Now, like I said before, my biggest social media presence is in China. The basic most interesting feeling about the Chinese social media though is how self-contained it is, okay? It's a bit closed environment, to be very honest with you. So everything you use here, right? All these like Facebook and Google and Instagram or YouTube, whatever you're using here, they have their own versions there. And they have no access, no direct access to all these foreign social media platforms. WhatsApp of China, which you can consider Weixin, right? But actually Weixin is much more than what WhatsApp can do. It's like an everything app that you can go anywhere with it. You can buy tickets, you can shop, you can send money, receive money, stuff like that. It's a very capable app. So that's the other thing. All the versions of these social media platforms that they have over there are very capable and works very well within China. But again, all this creates a very closed but unique environment in China. All these like memes, trends, or editing styles like is very different than what you would see in international social media. I was also affected quite a lot by this. Like I've done many videos thinking, oh, these are very Chinese style now that I'm doing, right? But then I would overhear some comments from the people who works on those platforms that I'm sharing in, introducing me as someone like, oh, Yunus here shares videos more in the YouTube style, where I'm like, really? So there's a very clear distinction between the Chinese social media and foreign social media. And the other thing about using social media in China is it's very fun to interact with people over there, in my opinion, but also culturally very different. Like sometimes they're gonna ask you some questions that you might think is borderline offensive. They might ask you like, why are you so fat? Oh, you've gotten quite fat recently. Stuff like that. But here's the thing, they don't do this to insult you. It's just a very plain observation. And it's just the way they communicate. But again, if you're not prepared for these kind of questions or comments and stuff, at first you might feel a bit like, oh, why are you talking to me like that? Why do you hate me? Or like, for example, when you speak to them in even the simplest Chinese, let's say you say something like ni hao or something like that, like hello, they're gonna be like, oh my God, you're a master of Chinese language now, you're amazing, blah, blah. They're gonna start praising you and stuff. And you're gonna feel like, oh, okay. I must be quite cool. And you're gonna get a lot of positive interest out of that, to be honest. Or if you ever wear some Chinese clothes or try to act Chinese, they usually love it actually. They will not think in terms of like cultural appropriation or stuff like that. They will actually appreciate it, obviously, as long as you're being respectful in the way you're doing those. But with all that said, another side of Chinese social media is whatever you do, it's hard to get rid of that title like outsider, foreigner. In Chinese, they're gonna call you Lao Wai. They don't say this to belittle you or something like that. It means basically outsider. But if you don't at least look like East Asian, you're always gonna be Lao Wai. It's hard to get rid of this. Again, they don't say this to be mean to you, but in long term, it might kinda wear on you if you especially care about these kind of things. I don't know. Also, we have to admit there are quite many limitations when you start sharing in Chinese social media. Like you see how I'm sharing right now with my tattoos exposed and stuff like that? I wouldn't do that in China. Most of the times I do videos in China, I'll cover my tattoos. There are no clear laws or any rules or anything like that, but hush hush, we know. Or for example, if you're LGBT, well, how much do you want to promote that? How obvious you want to make that? Can get a bit tricky. There are a lot of these like gray areas in China, like you might be able to walk on kinda, or they might let you walk on those lines, but in general, we'll know there are certain rules that you don't want to go over too much. And there are some red lines as well in China that you have to be careful about. Like you don't want to talk about politics. As a foreigner especially, don't talk politics. And there are certain things like they are very sensitive about. They don't appreciate you talking about this. Very clear. But here's the funny thing. As long as you don't cross these red lines, I've also seen this, like there's certain things that you can actually speak more freely there than you'd be able to talk here. For example, remember my comment about like being overweight, blah, blah, blah? Well, you can be quite ruthless there when you talk about these things. Not so much in the Western life, in my opinion. So it's interesting. There are different lines to be careful about. And from that one, I'm gonna now move to Turkey, Turkish social media. However, if you're really interested in Chinese social media and would like to know more, let me know in the comments. I can do a specific video about Chinese social media. And I'm actually planning to do that later on, like how to grow your account there a bit more, or my story there, blah, blah, stuff like that. Now, when it comes to Turkish social media, guys, it's a bit more different. Turkey is right in between the East and the West. So you often see influence of both these worlds. Sometimes it's very nice because like you have a good balance of certain things. Sometimes though, you're gonna find this stuck feeling in Turkish social media. Like they wanna be West, but also East at the same time. You're gonna sometimes see this confusion, which will feel like it doesn't fit anywhere at all. This is one of the unique aspects of actually Turkish social media to me. That being said though, I have to admit, like everything I'm gonna tell you, you have to also understand I use social media in Turkey as a Turkish person in Turkish language. So my experience might differ than yours slightly. Even then though, I'm gonna try to give you some objective observations as much as I can. Now, one thing I notice in social media in Turkey is like things revolve around respect a lot, okay? Sometimes even more so than what you're saying is right or wrong necessarily, and so on. What do I mean? If your audience respects you, they're gonna stick with you. Even if they don't agree with you all the time, sometimes even most of the time. However, if you do any little thing to lose their respect, they can also flip on you really fast and cut you off from their lives like really quickly. It's very interesting. So sometimes it makes it a bit harder to create objective content in Turkey, in my opinion. But another positive side is audience is often very appreciative. When you give people something useful or you try to teach them or you show them that you have good intent in your video, they really appreciate this. They show this to you with their messages, they try to contact you or they try to support you in many ways they can. And again, just like we just said, they stick with you, they stay loyal to you. But at the same time, you have to understand they're very direct in Turkey, guys. They don't often sugarcoat their feedback, and they might be actually a bit rough on the edges, to be honest with you, when they're speaking to you, especially if you're not their favorite person. Let me put it that way. But if they do respect you, they talk to you in this deepest respect, okay? Almost to a fault, which in exchange, you have to be careful about not being carried away by their compliments and their respect. Also, you have to expect them to be very curious. You might expect a lot of questions, quite non-stop, almost inquisitive in a way, but this is almost never done with bad intent. People are just curious, and when they have questions, they're gonna ask you. It's not aggression or anything, it's just genuine interest. It's also very interesting to use social media in Turkey for me as well, and I do enjoy it a lot. It's just a way for me to communicate with my people, right? Because I haven't lived in Turkey for so long. However, I have this platform, this chance to connect with people from Turkey, exchange with them. I appreciate this quite a lot as well. It gives me a lot of fun and a lot of fulfillment, to be very honest. And from now on, I'm gonna now move to my experiences and observations about the US social media. However, again, if you're interested in Turkish social media or what kind of stuff happens in Turkey, stuff like that, let me know in the comments, guys. I would like to choose some of the topics of the next videos from your comments as well. Now, when we get to the US, guys, it feels very interesting to me also, because even though we are saying US, it's actually global stage. When you create a content in English, it's like opening the gates to all kinds of viewers at once. The variety is huge. There are so many different backgrounds, different expectations, different reactions, and so on, right? So it can be overwhelming, to be very honest with you, coming from Turkish or Chinese social media in a way. And here's something unique to hear too, like in Turkish or Chinese social media, production quality often does indicate a bit of quality of content, even if it's a little bit, right? But in the US, you never know what you're getting. That's what I've noticed. Like there can be really, really high production quality, and then you open the content and it's like, huh? Bro, what are you saying? You know? But then you're gonna see this other guy with just an iPhone camera with no microphone, and then you hear him talking and you're like, wow, this is amazing. So you don't always know what you're getting just looking at production quality. Anything can go viral, like there's no real pattern. It's very interesting. But one negative thing I see here is like, everything seems very politicized. Even neutral topics somehow get dragged into political discussions, which is kind of cool. I appreciate politics or people's political opinions. It's nice to have this exchange. Cool. It's just, I wish it wasn't that pronounced here. Like, it just makes harder to speak freely without being labeled. Let's put it that way. Another thing I see in the US is like, trends move really fast. And once something works, everybody else is doing the exact same thing. It sometimes makes me feel like even with all that variety, there's less room for originality. I don't know if it makes sense, guys. And here's my personal struggle. I sometimes feel this lack of genuinity. There's so much content that feels like they're chasing views for monetization, not necessarily to have a unique human experience. It's hard to find content like where creators are just being themselves. They're just talking. They're just having a human conversation with you. I really miss this sometimes, seriously. And not trying to be the next big thing, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, these are just my personal experiences, guys. Just my thoughts. They're not universal truths or anything like that. However, guys, I have to admit, I really appreciate having this chance to connect with you and do this video, because making this video also had me reflect on my own adventure, to be honest with you. I never thought about this topic before, like what are the actual differences? And it made me think about these things. So thank you for that. It was a good thought experiment for me, and hopefully it gave you something to think about as well. And I tried to summarize everything as much as I can, but again, please, if you have any other questions or comments, let me know down below and we can talk about it. And maybe I can create new content based on those and so on. I don't know, guys, have you ever used social media outside of your own country? I'd love to hear about your experiences. That being said, thank you for listening. Even if you didn't like this video, guys, I still appreciate your time. If you want to support me, guys, please don't forget to follow, like, and hopefully I'll be able to see you in the next video, guys. Thank you so much once more. Love you all. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.